You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos Country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, I think every single one of your teams won this weekend, and won in dramatic fashion. That's a pretty good weekend for you.
Yeah, not too bad. The St. Louis Cardinals didn't do as well as I'd hoped. They were hot there for a little bit, our St. Louis Cardinals. But the Rockies are playing good, so I'll cheer for the Rockies and the Royals when the Cardinals aren't playing. Those are probably my other two baseball teams. But the Hawks won against Iowa State. Offense looks like garbage, but the defense, honest to God, might be the best defense that I've seen the Hawks have in my lifetime, and they've had some pretty good defenses. And the Broncos 1-0, undefeated, 19-0 until they aren't, baby. So let's keep it going. I'm excited about it. Football is back. The weather is great right now, and I'm just excited. I do have a little bit of disappointing news as far as football on my end, though. I have season tickets for the Hawkeyes, but I made a commitment months ago to go up to Decorah and drink beer and kayak and camp, which woe is me, right? The weekend of September 22nd, and that's the weekend of the Iowa-Wisconsin game. So I have tickets.
Oh, man.
I can't go, and it's going to be a night game, and it's going to be incredible, and I'm a little butthurt, but I'm a man of my word, and my fiance and one of her best friends and her husband and a couple others are going up there. So I said, no matter what, we're finding a bar. I don't care if you guys have to drag me out of there. I'm watching the full Hawkeye game. I don't care if it kicks off at 7:30. Like, I'm already missing the game. So I'll be probably feeling pretty good. Toppling Goliath and Pulpit Rock. They don't sponsor the podcast, but if you're from Iowa, man, those are two great breweries in Iowa. So football to keep going here. And man, it's been back. I have some time between patients sometimes at work and et cetera. And I did get to watch some football today at my desk as well. So it's really football season. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to have games that matter and snaps that you can actually dissect and say, hey, every starter was in, and this is the team that's moving forward. So I'm excited by that. But I'm especially excited about our Broncos, and I want to let you know that the Building the Broncos podcast is focused on all things that pertain to your Denver Broncos as it relates to the NFL draft, to the offseason, to team building, to breaking down film. With Nick and myself being armchair GMs and coaches, we'll be bringing you fresh insight and analysis each and every week in every single episode, from scouting the enemy, player value, scheme and personnel fits, and of course some general football-related banter. You can follow myself on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH, as well as follow Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And be sure to tweet us any questions or opinions you have, because we live for talking Bronco football. You can also follow the podcast Twitter account at HuddleUpPod, and make sure you check out ours and our co-writers' written content at milehighhuddle.com. A part of 24/7 Sports and an affiliate of the CBS Sports Digital Network. We know you listeners are as football, draft, and Bronco crazy as we are, so please give us a click and subscribe to us on iTunes as well as Stitcher. And don't forget to share us on Facebook and Twitter. We wouldn't be here today without you listeners. So as a call to action, please go and take the time to go to iTunes or Spreaker and rate and subscribe to let your voices be heard on how you enjoy the show. Now, before we get going, we want to first say thank you to our great sponsor, Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Again, that's www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. All right, we finally have a game that we can analyze and look at, and it's always so much nicer to analyze after a win. Broncos 27-24 over the Seattle Seahawks. A little bit of revenge. I know it's not the same kind of revenge you would hope for as Super Bowl 48, but man, it feels good to get that first win out of the way, especially starting off the season on the right foot. And lots and lots of good to take from this game. Definitely some things the Broncos need to work on, but we thought we'd start off this podcast with a 6-pack of facts about the game that we saw, and we want to give the first credit for this entire game to the domination that the Broncos showed in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Offensive line opened up the holes for 146 rushing yards, and of course, Case Keenum barely got touched the entire game. I mean, it was some of the best blocking I have seen in a long time, and I can't believe this offensive line could really be a huge asset this entire season for the Broncos. After what we've seen the last few years of especially the right tackle position, guys just getting destroyed. We just saw Khalil Mack get traded to the Bears, and that man, I think he made a career out of embarrassing the Broncos and their right tackle. So to finally have a guy that can hold up on that end, seeing these other guys, Connor Mcgovern, I just watched some plays of him today, just singling him out. He was pancaking guys. Paradis was doing his job pretty well. Not the best, but he was still doing his job pretty well. Leary's still looking a little rusty, but getting the rust off there. And Bowles looks like a whole new player. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I am just so excited about the trenches on both sides of the ball, but got to start with the offensive line because it's been an issue for very long. And if any of you listeners have been here, Carl and I want to pat both of our backs. We've been screaming on this podcast that people really wanted the Broncos to take Quentin Nelson with the 5th overall pick, a good chunk of them. I know we were quarterback people, but I said the only player that's not a quarterback I'd be okay with at 5 was Bradley Chubb. And gosh, this offensive line does not need Quentin Nelson. Don't use the top 5 pick on a guard, goodness. But man, Bowles has been playing incredible. I love the strides he's taken. I think his best 2 games have been his last 2 games, week 17 last year against the Chiefs, and then this game, I think arguably his best game ever. There was some great plays in the run game. They're running behind him. They're getting him out in space. They're asking him to climb to the second level. And I love the coaching decision of using Bowles' quickness and quick hands to engage quicker in his pass sets. He's not dropping with as much depth as he used to and letting the guy's strength, drive him back there. And you can see it. I don't think he allowed a single pressure all game long. Granted, Case Keenum having pocket awareness compared to the Helen Kellers that we've had back there in Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian makes a big difference. But gosh, Garrett Bowles having a great game. Jared Veldheer having a great game. Ronald Leary, he did give up a couple pressures up the gut, but having a great game as well. Matt Paradis graded as the number 1 center by Pro Football Focus, even though they don't have Von Miller on their all-week team, which is absolutely garbage. But that's something else we can complain about another time. And Connor Mcgovern as well. I mean, goodness, this whole offensive line looked fantastic. Granted, the Seattle defensive front is a far cry of what they've been recently. I mean, 2013 is a long time ago. Even last year's defensive line was much better than what they had this season, what they're going to have this season. But man, offensive line playing great. Case Keenum had, I think, 1 pressure the whole game. They were opening up holes. They were grinding and starting to lean on the Seahawks at the end. And something that Iowa preaches, it's a kind of more of a football phrase, but you got to break the rock. And that starts up front. And eventually you start hitting, you keep hitting, and eventually you break through. And that's what the Broncos did this week. And it was a beautiful sight. I'm absolutely loving what this offensive line showed. And I was trying to, temper expectations, saying the offensive line could be average, but with the growth and solidification of Bowles and Jared Veldheer at right tackle, and also the additions of Chris Strausser, the offensive tackle coach, and Kugler, the interior offensive line coach. I mean, this offensive line is trending up, and they honestly, if they stay healthy, they could end up a top 10 offensive line this season, which is absolutely insane. And I think they've been better than a lot of people have given them credit. I just think that falling behind has made them have issues. And then again, having a quarterback that has no idea what pocket awareness is, stepping up into blockers, taking drops so far back that he is giving the pass rushers on the edge an angle around the tackles. I mean, having Keenum there really solidifies the offensive line, but I'm really excited about it. And as you can tell, I've been on a rant for about 10 minutes now, it feels like, but gosh, I'm stoked about the offensive line.
I just want to throw this stat out there just to show the domination of the trenches for the Broncos, especially when it comes to pass rush and pass blocking. The Broncos allowed the lowest percentage of pressure of any team in week 1. Only 12.5% of dropbacks had any kind of pressure. Now compare that to Broncos had the 4th highest percentage of pressure on defense at 42.5%. So that difference between those two just shows, again, the domination of the trenches for the Broncos, especially that offensive line finishing first in pass blocking efficiency there. That I can't remember if the Broncos have had a time where we could say that. So it just shows the improvement that this group has. Like you said, it wasn't the end-all, be-all great defensive line that they were going against. It's not like the Rams that they're going to face or the Chargers or some of those kind of teams. But still, anytime you can do that against a team, whether they're a great team or a bad team, that's great to see. So both sides of the ball, very, very impressed. But we got to keep going because we got a lot to get to here. We also wanted to talk about the passing weapons for this Broncos team. That is something to definitely get excited about. We have DT, we have Sanders. We always knew that those two were going to be great, but I'd say they've had a nice comeback, I would say.
Revitalized.
Yeah, there you go. Then you got Sutton making a couple really nice catches. He had the second most receiving yards of any rookie wide receiver in the NFL week 1. Deshawn Hamilton, I already had somebody point this out to me that I missed putting him on a list. He had one of the best blocks of the game that sprung Lindsey for that first touchdown of the game. I mean, 20 yards down the field and blocking his guy out of bounds. That was something to see.
He even turned him. Like, he gave Lindsey a lane. He pushed the guy and pinned him to the sideline, and then Lindsey just scooted on in. He sustained that block. That was really beautiful.
Yeah, that was nice to see. Of course, you got Lindsey as another weapon, but made a couple catches. It seems like weapons galore out there for the Broncos to take advantage of. And that's something they just haven't had for the last couple years. It really has been DT and Sanders, and that's it. You know, you got a little bit of CJ Anderson, but even there, he's kind of limited on what he can do. Hillman wasn't really much of anything beyond just kind of a speed guy that you hoped he could get to the edge once a game.
Quote unquote speed.
Well, yeah. He's not Lindsey's speed. Let's say that. No. Lindsey has that extra gear that is just pretty amazing. And of course, can't forget about Freeman. And I mean, that's our next point here is the rookie running back duo of Freeman and Lindsey. Thunder and lightning. I mean, it's true. We truly have thunder and lightning here in Denver. Lindsey just has this. You have a nickname. I'm going to let you say it for our listeners here, but it is so fitting of what this guy can do of just he's through. So I'll let you do that here.
Yeah, we'll start with Phillip Lindsay, the undrafted free agent from Colorado. And I'll admit, I know that some others, being a Colorado son, I wasn't as high on Lindsay when they brought him in. I'm like, okay, well, he may be able to get a role on the team, maybe practice squad this year. Gosh, I was wrong. Smack me in the face. I was definitely wrong. He is dynamic. He runs with great patience, his lateral agility, his fire, and then it's just his mentality too. But the thing that impressed me the most in this game was his ability to get through the offensive line, running between the tackles and being effective there. Now, is he going to be a guy that does that 15 times a game like you're going to have Royce Freeman do? No, I don't think he has the body, the frame that you want to do that. If you do that, I think you're going to limit his effectiveness. I don't know if he has the ability to accumulate those hits, but man, he just is able to squirt through the offensive line. And that's honestly, it might not be his favorite, but that's going to be my nickname for him. I think I'm going to call him Squirt. He's just a little guy. I know that, but the way he's able to get through those holes and just like you had a better sound effect than I did for it, but Squirt, man, he's so much energy. He's fun and a passing weapon as well. So as long as he continues to work on his pass blocking, which I thought he showed the heart to do it this week, which is a big part. He's going to have to keep improving there, but he's going to be a big part of this offense going forward. And him and Royce Freeman together, man, that's a lot of fun. Freeman's more of the, like you said, the thunder compared to the lightning, but he's got a little bit of giddy up in his runs as well. But my favorite was at the end of the game, that last drive that the Broncos had when they were trying to grind it out, that 4-minute offense, and he just started grinding on them. The offensive line, give them props as well, but Freeman started grinding on them, and it was an 8-yard run, 9-yard run, and that was beautiful to see. And something I also really love about this is that, both Carl and I being roster people, roster building people, both these running backs are cheap and they are young, and that is huge. I never want to be a team that pays a running back big money. I mean, their shelf life is just not good. I don't think it's a good investment. I understand Le'Veon Bell sitting out, but I also understand the Steelers not wanting to pay him. I honestly would trade him if I was them. I think running back success is 75% offensive line, give or take, 5% there. Even, unless you're a freaking Hall of Fame running back like Barry Sanders, but that's beside the point. Those guys are rare. But yeah, offensive line's great. And also those guys both got a lot of tread on their tires still. I know that they were used in college, but that's a lot different than NFL touches. So really excited about this running back duo in tandem with this offensive line. This offense, man, the arrow is trending way up. Yeah, I mean, the fact that they could put up 27 points even with 3 turnovers, that's pretty unheard of. I mean, 27 points last year would have been 5th in the NFL overall. There's lots of games left to play, and the Seahawks were not the greatest defense they're going to face all season. But still, I mean, that's pretty impressive for this offense to be as high octane as it was, even with some mistakes. Their ability to recover, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But it's just everything you need to see out of an offense beyond the turnovers you saw from the Broncos. You saw the passing efficiency. You saw the running ability to really grind out the yards, like you said, in that 4-minute offense. I mean, Freeman carrying 3 guys with him for an extra 10 yards on a couple of those carries.
That's how you finish off games. That's how you win those close ones. That's the difference between 7-9 and 10-6. And that's the Broncos just haven't had that these last couple of years where they could really grind out those close ones. And so definitely some trending up things here with the offense. But we do want to talk about a couple not so great things for the Broncos and some areas where they're honestly pretty susceptible. And surprise, surprise, middle of the field, still susceptible to the pass game. Linebackers and safeties didn't tackle well. They struggled in coverage. They bit on the play action a few different times. They missed, 4 or 5 tackles on that tight end. I mean, no-name tight end that's known for his blocking, and he gets a 66-yard catch that it just was ridiculous. It was tough to watch. And so, I mean, it does look like the tight end group and maybe the running backs are still going to be a problem for the Broncos.
Yeah, the inability to cover the tight end in the passing game is something that it must be some sort of Mayan curse kind of thing, because it's been so long since the Broncos have adequately covered the tight end. I mean, even going back to Wade Phillips' tenure, especially Wade Phillips' tenure, the Broncos were not good covering the tight end. And I think that's something that the whole NFL is having issues with, because there are some freaks out there. I mean, who's stopping Gronkowski? Nobody. Maybe, I think, was it Malcolm Jenkins had a pretty good game against him, but man, you got to have a special player to match up against these receiving tight ends in today's NFL. And the Broncos just haven't figured that out yet. Maybe they have the guy on the roster. Maybe it ends up being Thomas, who did good in that game against Washington, or maybe it ends up being Will Parks, maybe Justin Simmons, who had some issues tackling this week, despite his good interception and other good plays. He had some issues there. But yeah, the tight ends continues to be an issue. And Will Dissly, that was the best game of his career. He only eclipsed 50 yards 2 times in his entire career at college. This is a guy who ran almost a 4.8 40. And there's just absolutely no reason that Will Dissly should be gashing you in the pass game. It's unacceptable, and the Broncos got to figure that out. I don't know if they will. It seems maybe it's going to be more of a personnel issue than a schematic issue, but it's an issue. And they gotta clean that up if they can. If not, if that's going to be an issue, then they have to clean up the chunk plays. Tyler Lockett broke contain on the outside, big touchdown. Will Dissly, not tackling over the middle of the field. Just got to play more discipline on that defense. If the Broncos play more discipline in the back end, they win this game by more than a field goal.
Oh, easily. Yeah. That was the big thing, is just giving up those big plays. I think 5 plays for the Seahawks accumulated about 60% of their yards.
Yep, big plays.
They stopped him on everything else. It's just that's all it takes with a guy, especially like Russell Wilson. You make one mistake and boom, it's a big play and they're right in the game. That's why the Seahawks were there for so long. Beyond just having a great defense, they didn't lose. When they did lose, they didn't lose by much, because they always seemed to be able to find a way back into a game, because they would just have other teams make mistakes that let them back into it. And the Broncos did that, unfortunately, but thankfully escaped with the win. Definitely some things to clean up there on the defensive side. And then we wanted to also give props to our special teams. Brandon McManus. I mean, you kind of forget how important the kicker is until you win a game by 3 points and your kicker made 2 field goals over 50 yards.
Yeah, right down the middle too.
Right, exactly. And of course, then you see the other side of it with the Raiders, where Janikowski, a guy that the Broncos fans are very
Seahawks. Former Raider Janikowski.
Yes, but Broncos are very familiar with him. But that guy shanked 2 of them. I mean, they were the same field goal after a penalty, but still, those big misses. I mean, that's the difference between overtime and possibly the Seahawks winning and them coming out with a loss. So good to see McManus making field goals. Of course, Marquette King has plenty to dance about on the field. He was out there just pinning them back at the 5-yard line. That was maybe the 2 best punters in football on the field at the same time in that game. I do have to give props to the Seahawks punter,
Dixon.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Dixon. That guy's going to be good for a long time.
He averaged nearly 60 yards a punt with 6 punts, and 4 of them were inside the 20.
Jeez.
That's incredible.
It is. And that's how you flip field. I mean, that's why the Broncos had to rack up so many yards in that game and they did. I mean, they got a lot of first downs, all that, but special teams played a big role in that game for sure. And then finally, big point of the game, Keenum. What do the Broncos have in this quarterback? He goes out and throws for the most yards that they've had since 2014 out of the quarterback. He throws 3 touchdowns, throws the game-winning touchdown, yet then he has these 3 interceptions that were really mostly his fault. I mean, the first one to DT where Thomas comes over the top and intercepts it. I mean, that was just a bad read. That was a bad throw at a bad time. They had the perfect coverage for that kind of play. No excuse. Yeah. His one where, I mean, the Seahawks defender made a nice diving catch, but it was a throw that was behind the receiver. And I'm trying to remember his third one.
It was over the middle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, McDougal.
Yep.
And he was trying to get to Sanders, but he was in double coverage. So all of those are just, you eliminate those 3 plays, and this, again, is not a close game. But that's part of the game, and it led to 17 points. And I will tell you, Keenum will tell you that was a bad game on his part. Even though he threw the 3 touchdowns, even though he threw for a lot of yards, even though the offense was moving like crazy, Keenum will tell you that was a bad game for him, that he cannot do that. And it just – that was one of those games where you wanted to pull your hair out because you're just like, if you don't throw interceptions, we win this game like crazy. And then he goes and throws another one.
Yeah, the Broncos had a great game plan. They moved the ball. They were winning on both sides of the trenches. But honestly, it came down to mental mistakes. Like the Broncos forget paper. Like they were the much better team on the field today. But they gave up big plays on defense, and they turned the ball over like crazy. I know it was 3-3 on turnovers on the day, but Russell Wilson threw a garbage time pick on the last play of the game. Like that, I know the Broncos are going to be even on the stat count, but as for all purposes of the game, that doesn't really matter. That pick was nothing. That's the same thing as an incompletion on the last play of the game. So those picks were bad. I mean, the Seahawks had, I think it was 17 points off those 3 turnovers too. I mean, that's almost their entire scoring output this game. So Keenum, I'm really shocked. He's talking about all preseason how Keenum hasn't thrown a pick yet. And he's going to be a great caretaker for the offense. And, it may not be the total gunslinger or the big arm throwing it around the yard, but he's going to take care of the football. Well, throw out that narrative, at least this week. I mean, absolutely. He was playing like a gunslinger out there. It was crazy. That touchdown pass he had at the end, I honestly thought it was intercepted. I know like it's a typical coach moniker, like a guy throws a ball or does something silly and you're like, no, yes. Like after it's like caught. And I thought for sure that Seattle guy intercepted it. And then I see DT holding his arms up in the air. I can't believe he got that ball through. He went 7 for 7 on that drive as well. So Keenum going out there, showing a short memory, not letting it bother him. We've seen the Broncos quarterbacks the past few years. If something like that goes wrong, it's over. It's going to snowball on him, and Keenum didn't let that happen. So big props to him on that, but he'll be the first to tell you he's got to clean it up because the Broncos vastly outplayed the Seahawks today on both sides of the ball, or not today, on Sunday, and the game shouldn't have been as close as it was, and the reason it was, again, the main 3 things, Keenum's turnovers, the tight end covering the middle of the field, and lack of discipline on the back end by the back 7 of the Broncos defense. Clean that up. This is a blowout because that's how much the Broncos were killing the Seahawks on the offensive line and the defensive line. I mean, there's no reason the game should have been this close to the Broncos winning that much on both sides of the trenches. So what can you do? I think Keenan will clean it up. The Seahawks defense is a far cry from what it used to be, but the Raiders coming up week 2, that's even a worse defense. So I'm expecting some more big numbers from them, and hopefully the Broncos can cut down on those turnovers as well, because that's a big thing. I mean, teams that throw or have 3 turnovers in a game, Vance Joseph said it, they lost 90% of the games that they played last year. You can't have 3 turnovers and win in this league. Back in the 90s when it was much more gunslinger ball and you had Elway and Favre out there throwing picks and running around, that's a different era. But in today's game, it's so much about ball control and not giving the team short fields. And if you're throwing picks like that, you're going to lose games. So don't do it. All right, well, moving on now, we have our standouts and letdowns from this game. We're a roster building player analysis podcast. It's not just about the actual game itself, but we like to look at players and point out the guys that do well and think about them going forward as it pertains to roster building. And we have 4 standouts each and 3 letdowns each. And my standouts from this game were Bradley Chubb, Garrett Bowles, Phillip Lindsay, and Adam Jones. Bradley Chubb, if you could get an assist for a sack in the NFL, they have half sacks and stuff, but an assist for a sack, Bradley Chubb should have gotten a few because he was doing a great job containing Russell Wilson, playing that backside contain, did much better in his run contain as well. He had some issues with that in preseason on a couple of runs, but he played a great game. He was getting a lot of pressures. I think he had 6 QB pressures or hurries. I mean, he was really beating that guy. And that was Dwayne Brown out there at left tackle, who is a very good left tackle, arguably a top 10 left tackle in the NFL. And Bradley Chubb, great game for his first one. There was a one play I remember where I just was like, oh man, because he was rushing upfield and he tried to turn the corner and he just doesn't have that flexibility or bend that you see from a true speed rusher, like an elite speed rusher, like, Chandler Jones, Von Miller, even Myles Garrett, that have that crazy ankle flexion that can turn that corner on a dime. But he's a power edge rusher. He's strong, and I think he's going to get better and better, and he really made Von that much better this week against a good left tackle. Garrett Bowles, we talked about him already, but man, probably the best game of his career. Love that the coaches have changed his pass sets, and they're running behind him more. They're getting him out in space. Use those tools, use that nastiness, because he can be a weapon, and I'm really excited to see him going forward this year. Phillip Lindsay, or my boy Squirt, as I'm going to call him. He's not going to appreciate it if he ever finds that out, but great game from him, man. What an offensive weapon. I'm looking forward to seeing him more and more. Maybe they can even get him some snaps playing in slot, line him up in the backfield and motion him out. And if you have single coverage out there against the linebacker, good night. And then Adam Jones, Tremaine Brock, I honestly, I think he maybe had 2 snaps in this game, 3 snaps. He's been supplanted. Adam Jones out there, he did a good job. He did, not a perfect game, but he's out there. He's playing solid, and I feel much better about this cornerback group this season. The long term, I'm pretty concerned about cornerback, but right now, Adam Jones, Chris Harris Jr., and Bradley Rubb, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, very, very good group. And honestly, it's kind of funny how in the NFL, of course, your counterpoints kind of work together. You said Bradley Chubb getting all those assists. Then, of course, I got to have Von Miller on the other side. I mean, one of Von Miller's best games as a Bronco, and he did get help, but he was still dominating that right tackle like crazy. And he was getting double teamed even through quite a bit of that game and still being that big of an impact player. Jared Veldheer at the right tackle spot. I mean, Garrett Bowles, Jared Veldheer, those two just that was the best I've seen our tackles play really since maybe Ryan Clady and Orlando Franklin were both healthy and playing together. That was maybe the best game that I've seen from that kind of combo. And then you got Phillip Lindsay, the Lightning. Then I got to go the Thunder, Royce Freeman. I mean, again, just to be able to grind out those yards there at the end of the game, that's something special. That's his vision that he brings to the game. That's something that's so hard to predict for a running back going from college to the NFL. And he's showing it. I'm very, very impressed at his patience in running, and then his ability when he does plant his foot and go, he gets north to south in a hurry. And then finally, you got to give Emanuel Sanders credit. I mean, 10 catches, over 100 yards, his big touchdown that he had. I think he's going to be a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL this year. When it comes all down to it, you're looking at the final stats, you're looking at the impact that a guy makes. I mean, he just has such amazing chemistry with Case Keenum right now. Those two are just so in sync of this is where he's going to be. This is the guy I'm going to throw it to. And of course, Sanders has incredible hands, incredible speed to break away. And he does. He looks so rejuvenated this year. He looks so inspired to go out there and perform well. And I mean, who can blame a wide receiver the last couple of years? We went from wide receiver heaven to wide receiver hell in a very quick time period there for the Broncos. And Sanders going from Manning to Simeon and Paxton Lynch and Brock Osweiler. I mean, that's not good. So even an average quarterback like Case Keenum coming in, you're going to get excited as a wide receiver. And so it's good to see Sanders looking good. But now flipping it to the other side of some guys that really need to step up moving forward. Here's my 3 letdowns. I had Tim Patrick, Shane Ray, and Jake Butt. And Tim Patrick, I mean, 2 big drops. One of them is a little bit more understandable because he was in tough coverage, but still, the throw was right on the money. It was going to be a huge play for the Broncos. He's going to have a lot of one-on-one opportunities. He's got to come up with those catches. Otherwise, get somebody else in there. Shane Ray, he just looked disinterested in the game. He was last guy off the line on a couple plays. I don't know. He's just not there this year. And I think he's just ready to be out of Denver. And then Jake Butt, it's mostly his blocking. He made a couple nice catches, but if the Broncos really want to take this offense to that next level, they need that tight end that can be both a consistent blocker and a consistent receiver. So the teams can't really pinpoint, okay, what are they going to do on this play? Right now, Jake Butt, he's not there as a blocker.
For me, another tight end, Jeff Hireman. He had a couple good blocks today, but really, or today again, I keep saying today. Jeff Hireman had a couple good blocks in the game, but he really didn't make much of an impact in the past game, and it's his last year of his contract, and he had a couple of splash plays in preseason. So I think he was a little bit of a letdown, but it's because the balls were going everywhere else. I mean, both DT and Sanders had over 10 targets, so that's that. I guess that can be kind of explained away. I mean, there weren't too many letdowns today. Darian Stewart, I said today again, goodness. Darian Stewart, a letdown, and he looks like he's lost his step. This is probably his last year in Denver. The team's probably looking to replace him. He's missed a couple tackles. He wasn't there on that big touchdown to Lockett when it looked like he was supposed to have help. He's supposed to be the backside help. So there's an issue there. And Devontae Booker, I mean, talk about sucking the air out of an offense. He came in after Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay were doing well, and he did his typical Booker stuff, ran to the offensive line, fell forward 2 yards, and felt like there wasn't a 3-and-out. They didn't have a 3-and-out in this game, but he just took the air of the offense, not very effective. And I know he's solid in pass catcher, pass blocking, but his time in Denver is limited. I'm not sure. I do think this is his last season on his contract. Pretty sure it's either 1 or 2 more years, but Broncos, with Lindsay and Freeman there, his role is going to be more limited and more limited. He's going to be more mop up and let Freeman get a breather if they're going to try to run it between the tackles, but I don't see him getting too much more of a role with how limited he looked in this game. And now the last section of this, before we move on, the game ball. The obvious one for both of us, Von Miller. I mean, best player on the field today. And there was a couple other guys that deserved it, but Von Miller, he's a freak. But my game ball, somebody that deserves some credit, Bill Musgraves. I mean, the Broncos, like I said, had no 3-and-outs. He was effective. He kept the defense guessing, and the Seahawks played with a loaded box the whole time. Broncos still ran it rather effectively, but he played the numbers. He let Keenum pass the ball around the yard. If Keenum cleans up those turnovers, Broncos win this game. And I thought Broncos win this game by a lot more. And I thought it was an excellently called game by Bill Musgraves and well executed by the offense.
And I'm going to go coach as well here. And as much as everybody wanted to harp on Vance Joseph last year for the team looking unprepared and just underwhelming, giving up in the middle of games, all that kind of stuff, this game showed a complete opposite view of that. And I think if you're going to criticize Vance Joseph for what happened last year, you got to give him credit for what happened this year. Of both sides of the ball looked very, very prepared for what the Seahawks were going to try to do. I mean, they had a great pass rush idea of how to contain Russell Wilson. That was one of the best jobs I've ever seen anybody do, of keeping Russell Wilson from really destroying any kind of game plan with his feet. And then, of course, the offense, like you already talked about, Bill Musgraves. I mean, they methodically moved down the field. They knew that the Seahawks were daring them to throw deep and have their guys there to pick them off. And the one time they did throw deep, it got picked off. But beyond that, they kept everything. Hey, you give us the short stuff, we'll take the short stuff. So it was very good to see both sides of the ball. And then, of course, special teams not costing them a game. All of that just working together. I got to give Vance Joseph a lot of credit for having this team ready to go week 1.
1-0 is much better than 0-1. That's for sure. Now, Carl, ever since we started this podcast, people have been asking us for advice from draft prospects, the upcoming matchup, everything like that. But usually it's what team to bet on this week. The truth is, we don't know who's going to win. But if you think you got to check out MyBookie. Remember, who you're betting on is just as important as who you're betting with. That's why I always tell people to bet with MyBookie. Trust me, guys, they are the best bet this season. They've been in business for years, have great reviews online, and their mobile site is easy to use. Lay out some cash today and win big. That's why I'm urging you to make your way to MyBookie. You win, they pay. Join now and MyBookie will match your dollar deposit. Use promo code Broncos100 to activate the offer and claim your bonus. You play, you win, and you get paid. All right, well, moving on now, we have the next segment of the show here, and that's going to be the Scout's Eye preview for Week 2 versus the winless Oakland Raiders. I just like to say that. Hopefully they'll be winless again next week, but my goodness, what a dumpster fire. I absolutely love it. The Oakland Raiders, I know it's kind of, there's more on the line, more hype to the games when the Raiders are good, but it just feels right to have the Raiders suck an egg. When they are sucking, it's things are good. Their fans are really annoying, toxic. All of them look like they just got out of the state penitentiary. I can talk bad about it. I don't know, Raider fans are probably listening to this podcast, so it's good to see the Raiders stinking, and they actually looked okay coming out against the Rams the first half. Yeah, I think it was 13-13 at halftime on that late Monday night game. But after that, the wheels came off the bus, and it was a sight to behold, and I think that things are going downhill very quickly for the Raiders. I mean, they got Derek Carr for that big contract, and he didn't play great. John Gruden was paid huge money, $10 million a year and 100% guaranteed. How are coaches getting guaranteed contracts but the players can't? Gosh, what a time to be alive. and they're moving to Vegas, and they're cash poor. They just traded Khalil Mack. Like, everything is just going perfect as far as a Denver Broncos fans' viewpoint over in Oakland or Las Vegas. Who cares? It's all a cesspool over there anyway. So sorry to my Las Vegas or Oakland Bronco fans listening to this, but screw the Raiders. So I got to say it. But man, 33-13, and the Raiders suck once again. And I can't believe some of the national media outlets were saying the Raiders potentially a playoff team. I feel like maybe it was ESPN having some bias towards John Gruden still. Come back after you're fired from Oakland, which feels like it might happen inevitably. But man, what a dumpster fire, and I think it's just going to continue to get worse.
Well, what I love is the media were talking to John Gruden today and asking him about his team. Are they a rebuilding team? And he pretty much said, yeah, that's what we are. I mean, he's admitting our team doesn't have the talent to compete for Super Bowls right now. And he's got that kind of confidence because, one, he's got total control over the team. And two, like you said, he's got that guaranteed 10-year contract. You're not going to fire him after 1 year. So even if he says, my team's a dumpster fire, they're not going to say, oh, well, here's your other $90 million. Good luck. They're just going to say, okay, keep going, man. Keep rebuilding this. And so he can actually be that kind of honest that most other coaches couldn't in the NFL. And then I loved his other big quote was, and I can't remember word for word, but pretty much after the game, he was like, well, we got to figure out how to get a pass rush. And everybody just, I love Twitter just lit up with those kind of quotes. And I found a picture of the guy laying on the bed holding the picture, and it's of Khalil Mack in a Bears uniform crying over the fact that their pass rush is gone. And I mean, it just you want to figure out your pass rush, you don't trade one of the best pass rushers in the NFL to another team. Oh my goodness. Oakland being Oakland, so you got to love that. But this is a team that's definitely in transition. It's a team that most of the moves that they're making, I just don't understand. I really don't. The trades that they've made, the players they've brought in, I mean, even the players they drafted, a lot of them were very, very high-risk players, guys that were just not ready to contribute to day one in the building, and yet now they're having to ask them to contribute day one. I mean, we're going to have some rookie-on-rookie action in this one. Colton Miller versus our number 5 pick, and I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see what our guy can do against them. So, but actually looking at this game and trying to figure out how would you attack them, our defense against their offense. Let's start there and just kind of work through this entire game of how we would go about trying to game plan for this game. I'll let you start here with how to attack the Raiders offense.
Well, the Raiders do still possess one of the best offensive lines in football. They have I would argue, the best interior offensive line in football, especially if you're running a power scheme. Cliche Osemele, former Raven, Iowa State Cyclone alum. He was a highly paid free agent acquisition, and he's an absolute tank. I mean, gosh, he's can move people. He can get to levels that you can't believe. And 6'5", 333 pounds with, I think, 35, 36 arm length. One of the best guards in football. And you can run behind him. He's not always the most light on his feet, but they want to run power football, and he's great for that. And Broncos interior defensive lines can have some issues with him. I mean, just what happens when you go against a great player. Rodney Hudson on the middle as well. Probably one of the better centers in the league. I think he's taken a little bit of a step back since his early days in Oakland, late days in Kansas City, but still good player, very smart player as well. And Gabe Jackson, yeah, he's probably the biggest guy on that entire offensive line as far as mass goes. I think he's close to 340 pounds and he's even less of a dancing bear than Osemele is. But if he gets his hands on you, he can push you. I mean, you just got to be quicker than him and beat him there because he's got so much power and strength. And he can be an issue when you ask him to move. He can have some issues in pass protection, but run it behind him, and he can move people. They did move Donald Penn from left tackle to right tackle, and he's a big boy. He's getting older, and I thought he did pretty good against the Rams at the right tackle spot. Sometimes there's a question about how effective guys are going to be from moving from left tackle to right tackle, but he's a good player, although he did miss a lot of camp because he was sitting out wanting a new contract. So there's some questions there about his chemistry with Jackson there at right guard. And then left tackle, Colton Miller, 18th overall pick, very raw but very athletic. And he had a false step on tape, and he just had a lot of issues on tape as well with his technique. And he looked pretty good against the Rams, I thought, but I don't fully trust it yet. He looked very bad on tape at UCLA, so I'm attacking Colton Miller all I can, sending stunts, Bradley Chubb crashing into him. And again, you mentioned it just a bit ago. First-round pick against first-round pick. I'm hoping the Broncos can match up helmet for helmet against the Raiders' offensive line. And a big reason for that is Derek Carr. He really struggled in that Rams game as far as throwing the ball when he had time. It didn't make sense. He was throwing the ball away. It was 3rd and long, and he had time, clean pockets to step up into, and he's checking down. He's throwing the ball away. I don't know if it's because of the injuries he's sustained, but the dude is playing scared right now. So hopefully the Broncos, just their front defensive line, the edge rushers, and the interior defensive line can match up against that Raiders offensive line, get some pressure, but even then, it just needs to be not getting blown back in the run game and getting those bodies in the back to have their eyes on Derek Carr because he did throw 3 interceptions to 0 touchdowns against the Rams.
Yeah, I charted each of his throws in this last game, and I think he only threw to receivers 9 times the entire time. Now, given, of course, the Rams have a good 1-2 punch there at cornerback to kind of force teams to have to pass more towards the middle of the field. But it really did look like you said, Carr is really struggling to trust his offensive line, to trust his eyes, to trust even being able to stand up and take a hit. I mean, because as a quarterback, you got to know you're going to get hit at some point in the game. It doesn't matter, even if your offensive line is the best offensive line in football, you're going to take a few hits. That's the way football goes. And he's just not a guy that's willing to do that right now. His reaction is, look at my first read. It's not open. Oh, either I'm trying to escape the pocket or I'm hitting my check down running back right now. I mean, that's why most of his throws are 5 yards or shorter. And that's why, I mean, they kept putting up a stat during the game. I don't know if you saw this at the bottom of his time to throw is like 2.2 seconds, which is about 0.5 seconds faster than the average in the NFL. Well, that's great. But it also means teams can figure out pretty quickly you're throwing everything short. And eventually they're going to make adjustments. And even Aqib Talib talked about it today. He said, we didn't know what to expect defensively against John Gruden, which is very understandable. The guy's been gone for 10 years. What is he going to try to play? What type of style of offense is he going to go with? And they said once we figured it out, they made 0 adjustments, and it was easy for us to defend it. I mean, they pretty much put guys across the 5-yard line, 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, and said, beat us over the top. And Derek Carr couldn't do it. He wouldn't challenge them deep. And the couple times he did, it seemed like he got picked off. So then he stopped even wanting to try it. And run game wise, I mean, as great as beast mode is, he still only rushed for 41 yards in that game. So, I mean, that means the Broncos had 2 rookie running backs outrush him in their first game. And they almost had, I mean, he had 11 carries. They had 15 carries each, but still, I mean, he doesn't have that second gear that he used to have. He can push the pile. I mean, he can pick up a couple extra 2, 3, 4 yards because he just keeps grinding his feet, but he's not going to all of a sudden break through a tackle and boom, he's gone for a 25-yard run anymore. That's just not his game. So I think the Raiders are a little bit limited on offense. I mean, they do have weapons though. Jared Cook, 9 catches, 180 yards. I mean, talk about the Broncos' biggest weakness and the Raiders showing that their greatest strength is maybe their tight end making catches over the middle. That's not a good sign for the Broncos. So I guess how would you go about trying to stop Jared Cook here?
You got to hit him early and often. Hopefully match him up with a safety, crowd bodies in the middle. You know, we talked about Derek Carr struggling with lack of pressure. So honestly, I'm not trying to blitz too much in this game. I want bodies in the back, and I want to crowd that middle. Hopefully, I mean, you might be susceptible to some big plays, but I want cover one. Derek Carr is not throwing the ball deep, even though he did have a good deep throwing arm. So we'll see. But I want eyes in the backfield. I want to be attacking that football, and I want to crowd that middle. So whether it be a Tampa 2 or a cover one with the strong safety coming down, you got to take away that 5 to 15 yard throw over the middle of the field, and that's going to hopefully slow down the Raiders' tight end. Not only the tight end, though, but Jalen Richard had 9 receptions for 55 yards as well, and 11 targets. I mean, Jared Cook had 12 targets. Jalen Richard had 11 targets, and after that, Jordy Nelson had 4. Amari Cooper had 3. I mean, what? So you got to crowd the middle of the field, I think, and if Derek Carr beats it deep or you're not getting pressure and he's doing okay, then you can kind of switch it up, make some adjustments. But based on what I've seen, based on what the trends are right now, I'm not sending too many people. I'm letting my pass rushers that are already there obviously go, but I'm not sending Chris Harris Jr. or anything. Maybe on some third downs or everything, but nothing too crazy. Keeping it simple and letting the Raiders beat themselves, because right now Derek Carr is not playing good football. And if you can take away that the underneath stuff and the tight end, I think he kind of implodes on himself.
Yeah. I pointed out to somebody earlier today that Derek Carr and Case Keenum actually, career-wise, haven't been all that different. I mean, Derek Carr's career quarterback rating is 87.1. Keenum's is 85.9. Yards per attempt, 6.6 for Carr, 7.0 for Keenum. Interception percentage, 2.1 for Carr, 2.3 for Keenum. Completion percentage, 61.5 for Carr, 62% for Keenum. I mean, these two quarterbacks actually, if you're looking at the hierarchy of where they rank in the NFL, at least what they've shown career-wise, they're not that different. I think Carr gets a lot of attention for that one great year and for being a second-round pick. I mean, Keenum's an undrafted guy, so he's always going to be doubted, all those kind of things.
And he has a brother that was kind of a big storyline as well. Right,
that's true. That is very true. But again, it's just he's not living up to the contract that he signed, and what's making this whole Khalil Mack being gone thing all the crazier, I guess. So you have an average quarterback. Sweeter. Yeah, sweeter. There you go. I mean, you got an average quarterback that's getting paid big money. You got a coach that looked very overwhelmed in game one, getting paid $10 million a year for the next 10 years. You got all these stadium costs that now you're having to rack up, and so now you've lost this great player and got to go watch him dominate for a half against a good Green Bay team.
And then complain that you're not getting pass rush.
Yep. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. That's exactly it.
The audacity.
Then you go and complain about that. Yeah. And so, I mean, I gave that stat earlier of the Broncos offensive line holding the Seahawks to 12.5% pressure percentage. Raiders were held to 14.7% percentage, which was third worst in the NFL for week one. So, I mean, this seems like a good matchup for the Broncos. Keenum should have lots of time to throw, just like Jared Goff had in this last game. So I guess now we're kind of switching to the other side of Broncos offense attacking this Raiders defense. But I mean, there's going to be some opportunities there because they just don't generate the pass rush that you need. And so I think the Broncos can pick them apart if they kind of do what the Raiders or what the Seahawks did of overloading the box to stop the run and daring Keenum to beat them. I think he's going to have plenty of time to throw and plenty of weapons to hit. If they decided to go light, run it at him. I mean, I think it's just really that simple this year. The Broncos can attack teams however they want. They have a strong running game, a strong passing game, and that's when things get good, when you can beat teams multiple ways. And I think right now, if I'm the Broncos, I'm attacking the edges in the run game. Bruce Irvin, Arden Key, they're both a little bit undersized for those edges. And they lost one of their best run defenders, it looks like, for this week. In
Justin Ellis?
Justin Ellis. There you go. Justin Ellis. There we go. They lost him for this game. He's one of their better run defenders, so you can even attack up the middle.
He is their best run defender. He's their nose tackle, nose guard, one technique, zero technique, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, he's gone. Looks like they're going to sign Jonathan Hankins to replace him.
Actually, Hankins signed with somebody else.
Oh, did he? Oh, wow.
Let me check that real quick. I think I saw that come through the Twitter machine today. Oh, nope, 27 minutes ago. He was going to visit somebody else, but he just signed 27 minutes ago with the Raiders. 1-year deal.
There we go. Okay, so Jonathan Hankins getting his first action of the year, having to step in real quick against the Broncos and their interior. But again, I just kind of want to attack those edges because their linebackers are not great either. I mean, you got Johnson, who, how old is he now? 36, something like that. Old. Yeah. Very, very old. And I want to attack those edges, force them to get running sideways, and then have some cutback lanes for the running backs to really look at their vision and just squirt through, like you like to say there with Lindsey. But even Freeman is very, very good about that and finding the small holes and getting through. And then playing the play action. I mean, Keenum last year was one of the best play action quarterbacks in all of football. So I'm using that to my advantage as much as I possibly can. And I mean, this is just a defense that's missing a lot of talent. Their front line, like I said, they got a lot of young guys that they're depending on. Gary and Conley is their number one cornerback, but he's really getting his first action in the NFL this year. And then they signed Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. I didn't even know he was still playing. And I mean, he looked decent in this last game, but still not great. And linebacker wise, I mean, again, they got a lot of age. Reggie Nelson's up there in age. Like I said, Derek Johnson's up there in age. Marco Ali. I mean, there's just John Gruden pretty much made the decision that he wanted all the guys that were just starting in the NFL when he was leaving the NFL pretty much.
It's like guys he never left. It's like guys are at his peak when he left.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you got Jordy Nelson is another one that he added to that wide receiver core. And I just...
The Oakland Raiders 2018 roster brought to you by AARP.
They should easily be able to get them to sponsor. I think I saw the Raiders have they're the oldest roster in football by almost a year.
Yeah.
And that's pretty crazy to talk about, especially for a team that says we're rebuilding. Usually you like to go with a lot of youth when you say that, but John Gruden has gone the opposite direction and is trying to see if that'll work out for him. So I don't know. I do. I think the Broncos have a lot of great opportunities in this one, both offensively and defensively to really dominate here at home. Yeah. If this was on the road, I'd be a little bit more nervous, but at home, I just think the Broncos are catching the Raiders at a time where Carr looks like he just has no confidence in his game. Offensive line has a lot of youth, it doesn't have a lot of youth. I mean, it has one youth and then some other guys that are pretty talented. But again, Penn at right tackle going against Von Miller, good luck. Even if he was at left tackle going against Von Miller, I'd still say good luck. I'd say that about any tackle going against him. And I think our interior guys showed some very good promise. I think they can at least hold up against the very talented Raiders interior guys. And I don't know. Like I said, I just think we got a lot of good matchups. Yeah, a lot of good opportunities to really put up some points and really contain this Raiders offense.
Yeah, I think they just got to work really hard this week and cover the middle of the field. I mean, Amari Cooper played almost all of his snaps when the Raiders had 3 wide receivers from slot. So Derek Carr is going to be spraying it over the middle of the field. They don't have really guys on the outside that make me feel scared. I mean, the Broncos cornerback depth is something we've been harping on here. Well, the outside of Amari Cooper, who looks like the slot guy, they have Jordy Nelson, who's ancient. It's a good player still, but ancient. Seth Roberts, Dwayne Harris, Brandon LaFell. I mean, this team lacks weapons, and that's why Richard and Cook are going to be a big part of this game. And I don't expect Marshawn Lynch. He's I don't know, old running backs. Are you kidding me? That's just not the way to go in the NFL. So if they can slow down Cook and limit Richard from killing them in the pass game, the linebackers being the coverage linebackers specifically being an area of weakness of this defense, Broncos defense should have a pretty good game, even though the Raiders offensive line, especially the interior, is really good. But really, it's the defense of the Raiders that is not good. I mean, Tank Carradine's the up and down player, had some injuries, but hasn't really shown. He had that massive injury in college and just never has been the same after that. PJ Hall and Reese Hearst, 2 rookie defensive tackles, which rookie defensive tackles normally take a few years to develop. I mean, look at Adam Gotsis, the difference between year 1, year 2, and year 3 even. goodness. Reese Hearst, he has that heart condition, so I'm pulling for him to have a healthy career, but both those guys more of the pass rushers, so Broncos should be able to run the ball. Hankins, he's going to clog it a little bit since they just signed him, but even then, he's not going to really know the playbook. How much is he going to be out there this week? Bruce Irvin, smaller guy, you can run at him, more of a hybrid type. Arden Key, again, long, but so skinny. And then the linebacker group, old and slow. Emmanuel Lamar, Derek Johnson, gosh, good player 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, but now coming off injuries and ancient, not great. Tahir Whitehead, player that used to play for the Lions, and okay guy, but man, not great at all. And then the secondary, ancient. Marcus Gilchrist, I think he was one of the leading tacklers this week. He was the leading tackler this week, 8 tackles, which you do not want to see. And he's playing safety, so that's never a good sign. Carl Joseph only had 8 snaps last week. They're actually going with Reggie Nelson, so again, another ancient guy. And then Rashad Melvin and Garyon Conley and Leon Hall. Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. Gosh, this Raiders defense is not good. So if Case Keenum doesn't move the ball in this game with the Broncos weapons, because the weapons have a huge advantage here, even the offensive line, they got a huge advantage as well. The Broncos should be able to move the ball. Case Keenum just got to protect it, and the Broncos should be able to win this game.
All right, then looking at special teams, I think Marquette King, just don't go get a personal foul for dancing too much. Yeah. And McManus, keep doing what you're doing. I think they're going to have some return chances. This Raiders special teams unit, it's not great either. I mean, their punter really struggled to punt at even 50 yards last week. And I don't know. I just think this is a good opportunity not only for the offense to get going, but to also have great field position to really attack. That's going to be something to really keep an eye on, is where the Broncos start field position in this game compared to last week.
Gosh, it would be beautiful to get an early lead and then just, get after Carr. Just play ball control after that. I'm starting to get boring. The Hawkeyes are taking over too much of my thought process. Okay, now key matchups. It's got to be Justin Simmons and the Broncos' middle of the field defenders versus Jared Cook. Jared Cook had, we talked about it already, but he had an absolutely incredible game last week. Didn't find the end zone, but if you had him in daily fantasy, you're probably pretty happy. 12 targets for a tight end. I mean, that's Gronkowski, Travis Kelce numbers, and then 9 receptions for 180 yards. The Rams do not have good off-ball linebackers or edge rushers, so that's the area of the field you want to attack them at, but still, 180 yards for a tight end hasn't really done much in a few seasons, so that's insanity. So Broncos covering Jared Cook, whether it be Will Parks, Simmons, Thomas, maybe Josie Jewell. I don't know what they're going to do. It'll be interesting to see because they didn't really have an answer last week for Disley, and Jared Cook is a much better receiving tight end. So honestly, that's got to be the key matchup for me this week.
And I went with Wolf and Gotsis versus Osemele and Gabe Jackson. I think, that's the strength of this entire Raiders offense. We've already talked about it quite a bit, that interior offensive line. So if they can even just break even, hold their own, hold their position, let the linebackers go make some plays, and I think they win if that can happen. If those two guys, and both of them looked really good this last week. Now, given the interior of the Seahawks defense is a vast difference compared to the Raiders, but that'll be a really fun matchup for me to watch.
Yeah, and you sent me a stat. You talking about Wolf, Pecco, and Gotsis out there, but Shelby Harris as well. What was the stat that you had on him?
He was on the field for 10 pass rush opportunities. He got 2 quarterback hits and 2 quarterback hurries. So on 40% of the passing snaps that he was in on, he got pressure. And that was the best in the NFL for anybody that got 10 or more pass rushing snaps this last week. That's special.
Shelby Harris is such a good player. Gosh, the NFL doesn't know about him yet. Thank God he's going to be just a restricted free agent next year. All right, well, my X factor this week, it's got to be the penalties. The Broncos last week, I believe they had 7 penalties for 60 yards, which is not great, but the Raiders, again, in typical Raider fashion, horrible. John Gruden keeping the tradition alive. They had 11 penalties for 155 yards. Outside of the turnovers, the Raiders lost that 3-0. The yardage, everything else looked pretty similar to the Rams, but turnovers and penalties, those are two things where if you're doing that, you're shooting yourself in the foot, you're losing yourself football games. So penalties are going to be big. Raiders are playing undisciplined ball. Take advantage of that. Keep your heads cool. I know it's a rivalry game, but let the Raiders shoot themselves in the foot. So 11 penalties for 155 yards. Let's see that continue this week for the Raiders.
Well, I looked in the the refs that are supposed to be a part of this game were the refs from the Thursday night opening game where they were throwing flags, it seemed like every single play. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, definitely stay disciplined. Don't go do anything stupid. Let the Raiders shoot themselves in the foot like they love to do. And then the X factor I have, I mean, I'm just going to go the very, very obvious one. Don't turn the ball over. Broncos don't turn the ball over. I think they win 99 out of 100 times in this matchup.
Yeah.
I mean, it really comes down to that. Like you said, in the NFL today, that is such a key stat. And I think the Broncos are they've won their last 33 games where they won the turnover battle.
I believe so. It's something ridiculous.
It's pretty crazy. And so it really boils down for the Broncos. If they can win the turnover battle, they win this game. And I think that's going to happen. Yeah,
I always say it, outside of actual points, which is the determining factor of if you win or lose, turnovers are the most important stat. So if you win the turnover battle, it's not only just about, protecting the football, but also taking it away, a.k.a. Von Miller taking Carson's cookies the other day. But that's a big stat, so I can't disagree. That's a low-hanging fruit there, Carl. But I'll let you get away with it this week because sometimes I do it as well. All right, well, prediction, I think the Broncos are going to win this game pretty handily. I got the Broncos winning this game 30-17. I was close last week. I think I was 3 points off of the Seahawks score and 4 points off of the Broncos score. So I think the Broncos are going to win this one. I think Keenum's going to play better, and I got 30-17 Denver.
And I got it a little bit closer. I have maybe a couple miscommunications on the back end again. So I have the Broncos winning 28-21.
All right, well, we're just about to get out of here, but before we do, let us tell you why you need to become a Mile High Huddle VIP subscriber. Mile High Huddle's approach to covering the Broncos isn't just about reporting the news, although we do pride ourselves in being able to relay you all the breaking news as it happens in real time. What we like to focus on is bringing you deep, in-depth analysis from all 22 film reviews, X's and O's, deep dive on player evaluation, and analysis on free agency, the draft class, etc. We save our best and most in-depth content for our premium members, the VIP subscribers. To become a Mile High Huddle VIP and get access to 100% of our written analysis and the VIP Insider forums, just click on the green banner at the top of the website. Click the monthly or annual option and you'll be locked in. From there, you get access to everything we produce. We work hard to bring you the best Broncos coverage and analysis on the web, and we ask you for your support by becoming a VIP subscriber. Pull the trigger today and you have my word, you will not be disappointed. That's going to wrap up this week's episode of Building the Broncos. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, a new affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles, not just related to the draft or team building, but all things that pertain to your Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and comment. Your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. We aren't just here to bring you the news, but an in-depth analysis each and every week. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast on iTunes and for Android users, Stitcher, as well as check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at Huddle Up Pod. Again, please be sure to subscribe and rate us and reach out to us as we love interacting with fellow Bronco fans. For Carl Dumler, I'm Nick Kendell wrapping up another episode of Building the Broncos podcast. Go Broncos, undefeated Broncos, screw the winless Raiders. We hope you enjoyed it and we will see you next week. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.